Let's talk about the runs while we have time. And in '82, I guess you guys both speak to it. Is there something that stands out to you about that time, aside that it was unexpected?
Until they met the Islanders, they didn't beat anybody that was ahead of them in the standings.
No.
And everything went right. Like Coley Campbell went to Los Angeles and scored 2 goals in a game for his first time since he'd been in Pee Wee hockey.
And the winner was in overtime.
Yeah.
And that afternoon, he was sitting in the jacuzzi with a knee that was swollen up like a basketball. You thought he couldn't even play. They won a playoff game in Los Angeles with the defense of Doug Hallward, Harold Snepps, Coley Campbell, and 2 kids named Andy Schliebener and Neil Belland.
Mm-hmm.
And Lars Lindgren had such a bad shoulder, he just sat on the bench and never played a minute. And they won a playoff game with that defense, and Campbell was the hero that night.
In '94, when did you think it was special?
It was that was an interesting time for me because I wasn't around very much for that. That spring, I was working in the East, so I was watching all the games, but I wasn't broadcasting them then. I hadn't moved back here at that point, so I was watching it from afar.
You know, it's amazing. They were down 3-1 to Calgary in the first round. Calgary had been ahead of them in the standings and expected to win the series. But Game 5 in Calgary went to overtime, and Jeff Corknell scored from quite long range on the left wing, put up by Mike Vernon.
Back when you could do that.
Yes, that's right. And after the game, the guy said, you know, we can win this series. They come back to Vancouver, and they go to overtime in Vancouver in Game 6. And it probably cost Coach King his job in Calgary, but they got called for too many men on the ice. And the Canucks, Trevor Linden, scored in overtime with a power play to send it to Game 7 in Calgary, double overtime. Pavel Bure scores the great goal, and they were on their way. I still think the '94 team, you know, people talk about the 2011 team, which is very good, but the '94 team was very good, and I thought would win the Stanley Cup.
You know, we talk about the improbability of the '82 team, the underachieving regular season of the '94 team. Well, that 2011 team was dominant. Every aspect of the game, goals for, goals against. I think they led the league in goals. They won the Jennings Trophy. Power play was at or near the top. Penalty killing was at or near the top. Their record against the Eastern Conference was almost impeccable. Yeah. And all they had to do was not lose 4 out of 5 after winning the first 2 at home.
That's life in the Stanley Cup playoffs, isn't it? The Canucks in 2011 got pretty banged up. Boston didn't. And had a few extra players that they could bring into the lineup that made a difference when their 4th line came back in, changed the series. They dragged it into the ditch and won it. The Canucks didn't lose it. Boston won it.
Nobody's left the building, and the fans are chanting, "Go Canucks, go!" A salute to their team, the President's Trophy winners.